There's an awful lot of publicity about the new inheritance tax laws for farming. If you've got a farm that's worth over £1 million, which is quite easy to get there with when you think the farm will also have agricultural machinery, some of which costs £500,000 or £1 million, then you will be liable to inheritance tax. What does it mean? Well, what it means is generational farming, where farms have been handed down to father and son, will find it very difficult to proceed and hold on to all their assets. So what do you do if you're that farmer? Well, you probably sell some of your land off to make the farm less valuable. Who's going to buy it? It just seems funny to me that there's a meeting with Larry Fink and Bill Gates, one of the biggest farmland owners in the US is Bill Gates. There's a meeting in number 10 2 weeks before the budget where this law is changed. But something I think people are overlooking here, this law has been changed for small businesses too. If you've got a business that's worth more than £1 million, then you will lose those inheritance tax benefits. What used to happen, I'll just read it out. Business property relief reduces the value of a business for inheritance tax purposes by either 50 to 100%, depending on the type of property involved. Now, if you're a layman, you're working in employment, that probably all sounds a bit grandiose, and businesses are getting, benefits. They need to survive, because you can imagine if you've bought your premises, you own, say, a garage with a car showroom, and you decide to buy the premises and you die, so you want to hand it on to your son. Your son inherits the business. The property or business is reduced by 75% to avoid a huge tax bill, because with a building that's worth and stock, the business is worth an awful lot of money. So you've got to look at what's happening here. This is encouraging people not to buy property, not to run farms. This is pushing us forcibly down to renting. You'll own nothing and be happy. Does that not ring a bell when you're seeing these changes? This is a Marxist budget. This is the beginning of it. This is the first crack of the whip from the Marxists having power. Now, obviously, people are going to kick back about this. There's a demonstration on Tuesday in Parliament by the farmers. The farmers can't survive this. The way we farm can't survive this. So does that mean that we're going to end up with people like Bill Gates owning our farmland? And when these characters want to decrease beef farming, want us to eat less meat and eat bugs, but you never see any signs of them doing this. That's the thing. And when you think these people fly around the world in private jets to talk to you about it, I mean, Larry Fink won't have travelled with Bill Gates, they'll have come separately, because they'll all be going off to different places afterwards. One person. Someone actually put on the thread, and I checked it out, that one trip in a private jet by an individual, say a decent trip, across Atlantic trip, uses up the carbon footprint of something like 20 families in a year. It's massive. And yet they go around putting notices in hotel rooms telling you to try and get a second day out of your towel, to save the ocean. And yet, why don't they just have more meetings by Zoom? I've done business deals worth a lot of money over the phone. I haven't had to travel anywhere. Why can't that be done? Because they don't practice what they preach. That's the trouble. And all these ideas that they're coming up with to save the planet, long term they're not going to work, because the articles, the equipment that they need, like the sails for wind farms, are made from biodegradable material. The solar panel farms, if they put them on land, as the components corrode, it seeps into the soil, which goes into the food chain, because it will all go eventually somewhere where we eat. And they're not coming up with any good ideas. And we've got a government now that is so inept and incapable. They're actually incapable of running a country. The only comfort you've got is other countries are faced with the same sort of people. Trudeau in Canada, Macron in France, I don't even know who's running New Zealand now since the horse left. She's with the money shot, isn't she? She's with Prince William now. And that's where you've got to be suspicious of the royal family if they can employ her after the way she locked down New Zealand. It's just unbelievable. So that we're in it now, we're in the thick of it. But I've always said it, the good thing about how bad it gets is that there's just enough time for it to get bad enough to wake people up. I want to say wake people up. When you get Jeremy Clarkson complaining about the budget and how his farm's being treated, and now he's around more normal people, he understands that, yeah, actually a lot of people voted for Brexit, and normal people don't think like you, Jeremy, because you were cushioned with your BBC salary and didn't really know what the real world was about. I mean, basically, you've made a living out of pissing around with boys' toys. So, you know, what can I say about that? He's now part of the real world, isn't he? And he's facing all the legislation that the EU have sunk us with in farming. So this is why I keep going on about people waking up. Clarkson's a prime example. And there was a lefty, it was like a contributor, like a professor, who's real left-wing, and he's made like a big announcement on his Twitter page. He's got about 80,000 followers. I can no longer support the party. I've been a member all my life. Now, when a party's doing that because of their decision-making, surely there's something going to go off in the head that they've got the decision-making wrong. But I don't think they will, because if you look at what's happening to the West with your Macrons and your Trudeaus, etc., and the way Australia behaved during lockdown, it's already happened, hasn't it? And the more you see it, the more you can't unsee it. So we will have a bigger team on our side. I see it on my Facebook page. More people are responding to what I'm putting out about this sort of stuff, about Marxism creeping into our politics. I mean, did you ever think that Marxism itself would creep into British politics? You've got Rachel Reeves, who's replaced Nigel Lawson's picture in the Chancery by a woman who was known to be a Marxist. Now, that's literally the writing on the wall, isn't it? And, you know, Rachel Reeves's credentials are often challenged online about where she claims to have been an economist at the Bank of England, an economist at HBOS, which is Halifax Bank of Scotland. For those of you who don't know, the banking work under umbrellas. So, for instance, Halifax Bank of Scotland is one umbrella, and Santander will be with other banks in their umbrella. So if you do have savings that are protected by the chocolate fireguard issued by the government of 85 grand per person, so a joint account is double that, make sure your savings, if you have split them up, are in banks that aren't under the same umbrella, because you'll only be guaranteed that 85,000. Personally, as I say, I think it's a chocolate fireguard, because the government haven't got any money to pay you out if the banks fold. And I think it's wrong. It was David Cameron who did it, who joined us up to the bank bail-in scheme, which was a European idea. That means if banks fail, like they did in 2010, then savers will step up to the plate, because once you put money in a bank, it's not your money anymore. A lot of people don't realise that. You are giving it to them, and you have the right to draw down on it, but it's not classed as your money anymore. You need to look into that if you don't know about it. So you see this shift of control all the time, gobbling up more and more control. But there's more and more pushback all the time. Now they've woken the farmers up. Quite a lot of farmers were quite happy to take money for not growing anything and not producing anything, to rewild and increase habitats. You know, a lot of people on floodplains were encouraged to not dredge the dikes that they'd already built to stop farmland getting flooded. There's all sorts of stupid legislation being brought through. And whilst the farmers are kicking off now, we've got to remember that Tony Blair altered farming with BSE and mad cow disease. He changed, and the way we were treated with foot and mouth. Britain were penalised so badly during that period because Tony Blair changed the farming laws to suit the European Union farming market, not the British. I happen to know that. My brother-in-law is a beef farmer. So we've been under the cosh for quite some time, but as I say, because we've been comfortable, young people have spare income to go out most weekends and get blathered and use taxis and have beer and shots. Young people have lived like that, and people who are now in their 40s have lived like that, and they've disposed of the disposable income, and then they're shocked that they haven't got any money for a house. It's not a shock really, is it? Because fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your viewpoint, my generation didn't have any choice. I was brought up in Blackburn. If I wanted a Chinese meal, there was one restaurant in the town centre. There weren't loads of takeaways, and there certainly wasn't a choice of restaurants. And if you wanted a really nice Chinese meal, you had to travel to Manchester to better restaurants. We didn't have the choice. We were used to, like, you went out on a Friday first, scampi in the basket, and in a pub, and had a few beers and scampi in the basket and came home. The guy with the tray with the seafood and the pickles came round. We didn't have the choice, so it was easier to save up because you didn't have the temptation of all the things that younger people have. But then again, common sense has got to kick in, no matter how much temptation there is. Otherwise, we'd all just be palled out with debt. And the other thing that also I think helps to cripple a country is telling kids that they should go to university to be worthy of a job. Because I look at the people that I know, younger people that I know that have been to university and got the degrees, and yet they've come out in jobs that somebody in my generation would have attained anyway without formal education. I don't understand that. I don't understand. And I certainly don't understand why there's never been any emphasis from any government for quite some time, over a decade, of the value of an apprenticeship. Because no matter who you are, doesn't matter if you're Ronaldo, you need a plumber, you need a heating engineer, you need a builder. You need these people, you need tradesmen. And that's why now plumbers, especially around London, are charging astronomical fees for their time. One of them, his call-out fee is £120. I'm not saying he gets it. Could be why he's on his settee a lot there. But the call-out fees are astronomical. Everything's geared up taking your money off you. And we're not educating our younger people how to fight back by things like, right, if you might have enjoyed your time bumming around at university, getting drunk and not looking after your digs and doing all the things your mother wouldn't want you to do. Hence, kids tend to choose universities a long way from home. Most of us have one in a fairly near town, but they don't choose those and commute and go home. They choose one where they can stay in digs, in halls of residence or student accommodation, so they can party. Although I would say foreign students that come here that have to pay, like the Chinese and the Russians, they take it seriously because they've had to pay to come and do it. None of this exchange stuff like we have with the EU. So there's so much gone on to take our money off us and to leave us with a society that doesn't know how to earn it. That's the big worry. The banks are closing on the high street. All this is okay, but it's a bit premature because there's a generation out there older than me, in the late 70s, 80s, like my mother-in-law who's 88, who's used to popping into town with a passbook to organise a financial life. That's how they do it. She hasn't got the internet, she hasn't got broadband, she doesn't have a computer. And there's millions of people like that. And what provision do we make for them? So today I thought I'd discuss all this and keep the business end away from what I really want to discuss, which is the most critical thing about what's happened to us this year, which is Southport, Peter Lynch, other issues regarding that. We must keep it going for the right reasons, for the little girls, for the families that suffer, for people who get ignored because all they want to talk about is the aftermath. And it is very important that we understand how badly we've been treated. And it beggars belief that all this was leaked the night before the most horrendous budget we've had. It's all linked, the way we're being got at financially. And the best, I don't give financial advice, I'm not a financial advisor, but all I've done for myself is consolidate. Don't, if you can, avoid borrowings. Don't listen to the mainstream media, it'll just depress you. They're lying anyway. What will be, will be. Like Kamala Harris in the polls, she's not lagging behind. She's not in the lead and he's lagging behind. That's just not true. But they did it with Boris Johnson, remember, and Jeremy Corbyn. They said it was neck and neck. Do you remember all that? I was the only blogger putting it out. They say, no, Jeremy Corbyn's really trailing behind. And what did we get at the election? We got the red wall with the Labour people who would never vote Tory, lent the vote to the Tory party because they wanted Brexit. Never forget, one of the most significant things to happen to Britain in this last decade at least has been the Brexit vote. Because it's put the cat amongst the pigeons. It's upset the elite. I don't like calling them the elite. The movers and shakers, the ones in control. They don't like it. We've pulled away. We were a cash cow for the European Union. We're no longer that lucrative for them, although we aren't out properly. And Ben Habib will back me up on that. But what you've got to look at is everything you have got in your life that's any good, you put there, and you're still capable of putting good things there. All we have to do is watch what goes on around us, because these people cannot survive long term what they're doing. They can't survive it because it's going to affect everyone, even the ones that they depend on to put them in power. They're not going to like it. The reality is going to hit. That's how it's going to be. So with my videos, if you do have friends who start joining the channel, nothing's time sensitive. You can always flip back and look through an older one, or if you've missed it, you want to listen to something again. It's there were a few time sensitive ones around the election, but that's passed. But don't be afraid to backtrack. I do that with other people. I do it with Neil Oliver quite a lot. I don't watch them chronologically. I watch them as and when I fancy it, you know what I mean? So I'm going to do another video probably straight after this when I've gone and made a cup of tea because I'm a bit dry. And I'm going to concentrate on how we proceed in a manner that's acceptable, but keep the torch burning for what happened to those people in Southport and the way we've been handled by the media and the government.